When people hear the word ego, they often think of arrogance, pride, or someone who thinks too highly of themselves. But this is a misunderstanding rooted in judgment rather than insight. The ego in its true form is not an enemy. It is not a flaw to be destroyed. The ego is identity. It is the internal compass that tells a man who he is in the world. It's the voice that whispers, you matter. You are capable. You have something to prove, not to others, but to yourself. To touch a man's ego in a way that makes him open his heart to love, you must understand this deeply. A man does not fall in love when he is impressed. He falls in love when he feels seen, and not just his smile, his achievements, or his charm, but when the core of him feels recognized. His ego, when approached with care, becomes a doorway into his soul. A man may look like he's searching for beauty, success, or admiration, but beneath all of that, he is seeking reflection. He is seeking a mirror that shows him the strength he hopes he possesses, but isn't always sure is real. When a woman sees his battles, understands his silence, and acknowledges the weight he carries in his shoulders without needing to fix him or outshine him, she is not just stroking his ego, she is validating his identity. That validation is rare, and anything rare becomes precious. In a world that constantly demands men to be strong, to perform, to remain composed, his ego becomes a protective mask. It's not always bravado. Sometimes it is simply his armor. Armor that was built not out of arrogance, but out of the fear that his real self might not be enough. So when someone sees past that armor, not to ridicule, not to dominate, but to truly understand something sacred happens, he begins to let go, not of his strength, but of his defenses. He stops performing. He starts feeling. He no longer tries to impress because he realizes he is already respected. The ego is the threshold of a man's heart. If you do not respect his identity, you will never gain access to his vulnerability. And without vulnerability, love cannot exist. Women are often told to be beautiful, kind, or supportive to win love. But the true secret lies in being someone who understands what most overlook, that a man's ego is a map to his values. It holds the story of his childhood pain, his adult ambition, his silent fears, and his greatest desires. And like any map, it does not make sense at first glance. It takes patience to read it. It takes wisdom to navigate it. But those who do are not forgotten. They are remembered in the corners of his soul where he stores loyalty, attachment, and longing. Ego is identity. And when a woman becomes the one who reinforces that identity with kindness, admiration, and authentic presence, she touches something no one else has dared to see. She does not need to flatter him to win him. Instead, she honors the part of him that is still building, still hoping, still trying to be enough. He may never say it in words, but in his actions, in his loyalty, in the way he begins to look at her like home, he is telling her she matters. Because she saw him, not the man the world sees, not the persona he wears for safety, but the man underneath, the one he sometimes forgets himself. The man who wanted to be a hero once, who wanted to be someone of value. And now she stands before him, not as a critic or as a prize to be won, but as a witness to his becoming. A man's ego does not crave endless compliments. It seeks alignment. It asks, do you see what I am trying to become? And when the answer is yes, when that yes is spoken through your energy, your respect, your attentiveness, something irreversible begins. He starts associating your presence with his power, not because you gave it to him, but because you reminded him it was there all along. You touched his identity not to control him, not to tame him, but to reflect him. And reflection is the highest form of connection. Love is often spoken about as the ultimate expression of devotion. But for a man, before love can bloom, respect must first take root. Respect is not just a gesture, it is a language, a silent, powerful force that speaks directly to the deepest parts of his soul. It tells him that he is enough, that his presence matters, and that his efforts are not going unnoticed. When a man feels respected, he stands taller, speaks more clearly, and lives more fully. He becomes the version of himself he's always hoped to be, not because someone fixed him, but because someone believed in him. Respect to a man is not a compliment given in passing or a polite nod of approval. It is an energy that surrounds him when he is seen not just for what he does, but for who he is becoming. It is the tone in your voice when you speak to him, the way you respond when he shares his dreams, the space you give when he's overwhelmed, and the encouragement you offer when he's uncertain. These small, quiet moments build a fortress around his spirit. In them, he finds a rare kind of peace, the peace of not having to prove himself constantly. A man doesn't fall in love because he is needed. He falls in love when he feels admired for who he already is. The world demands performance from him. Be stronger, be richer, be wiser, be in control. But when he comes home to a woman who offers not demands but reverence, who doesn't push him to perform but allows him to be, his heart begins to soften. In that softness, he feels safe. And where there is safety, love begins to grow. Many try to love a man without understanding what fuels him. They offer affection but strip him of autonomy, give attention but question his direction. This kind of love feels like a trap, not a sanctuary. But when a woman respects his choices, trusts his judgment, and allows him the dignity of being flawed without belittling him, he does not see her as someone who tolerates him. He sees her as someone who believes in him. And belief is magnetic. He cannot help but be drawn to it. Respect is not agreement, it is not submission, it is alignment with his value. You may not always understand his decisions. You may not always see what he sees. But when you honor the intention behind his actions, when you acknowledge the weight he carries as a man, you speak to him in a way that the rest of the world rarely does. Most men walk through life misunderstood, not because they cannot communicate, but because few are willing to listen without judgment. To respect a man is to listen to his silence, not just his words. It is to watch his actions and recognize the battles he fights without needing to announce them. In moments of weakness, a man does not need to be reminded of what he lacks. He needs to be reminded of what he is capable of. And when that reminder comes not from a place of pity, but from a place of deep respect, it becomes a lifeline. It becomes the reason he fights harder, reaches higher, and loves deeper. A woman who respects a man doesn't just win his affection, she wins his allegiance. When he feels that his voice matters, that his values are respected, and that his efforts are seen, he starts investing himself in the connection. Not because he feels obligated, but because he feels honored. And honor is not something a man forgets. It becomes the reason he returns, the reason he protects, the reason he stays. The world often teaches women to nurture through softness, through comfort, through care. But the woman who can offer respect alongside her love becomes irreplaceable. She does not merely soothe his wounds, she inspires his rise. Her presence becomes a source of motivation, her belief a mirror that shows him his own greatness. Not because she tries to control him or shape him, but because she reflects the man he is capable of being. In her eyes, he sees a version of himself that is whole, not in spite of his flaws, but because he is constantly growing through them. Respect is the foundation upon which everything else stands. Without it, love is unstable. With it, love becomes enduring. It is not a grand gesture or a dramatic declaration. It is found in the subtle, unwavering energy that says, I trust you. I see you. I value what you bring. And when a man feels this, his walls lower, his heart opens, and he begins to love with the same depth he feels respected with to truly reach a man's heart. It is not enough to praise him for who he already is. You must connect with the man he is striving to become. While many try to win him through shallow admiration, what truly captivates a man is when someone recognizes the mission that drives him. Every man, consciously or unconsciously, is chasing a sense of purpose. Behind his ambition, his silence, his overwork, or even his retreat, there is often a hidden hunger to matter, to build, to protect, to accomplish something meaningful. That hunger is not vanity. It is his purpose. And the woman who chooses to see that instead of just feeding his pride becomes unforgettable. A man's pride is often the surface, what he shows the world, his titles, his possessions, his confidence. But his purpose lies beneath. That is the place where his fears live, where his sacrifices take root, and where his hopes for something greater burn quietly. When someone only strokes his pride, they feed the exterior. But when someone supports his purpose, they nourish the core. Pride inflates. Purpose transforms. Many women believe men want to be admired endlessly. But admiration without understanding feels hollow to a man with depth. He doesn't just want to be told that he's great. He wants to feel that his effort means something to someone beyond himself. He wants to be reminded that his long nights, his failures, his relentless drive are seen, not just by the world, but by the one person he lets into his private world. When a woman can speak life into his mission, without needing to control it, edit, or compete with it, she becomes the fuel to his fire, not a distraction from it. When he shares a dream with you, no matter how incomplete or uncertain it sounds, that is not just information, that is trust. That is him handing you a blueprint to his inner architecture. Most people hear a man's dreams and immediately offer criticism, doubt, or solutions. But the one who listens, leans in and says, I believe you can do this, gives him something he can't find anywhere else, the permission to keep going when the world gives him every reason to stop. A man doesn't need someone to constantly reassure him with empty words. He needs someone who reminds him of his direction when he forgets it himself. When you notice the details, the way he focuses, the pressure he puts on himself, the way he carries burdens in silence, and you affirm not just his strength, but his intent, you are no longer just a partner. You become a witness to his evolution. Supporting a man's purpose is not about sacrificing your own voice or ambitions. It's about aligning your presence in a way that complements his journey without disappearing in it. A powerful woman does not get smaller to fit into a man's life. She stands beside him, holding a mirror to the man he's becoming, reflecting both his struggle and his strength with compassion and clarity. When a man feels that his purpose is acknowledged and encouraged, his ego is not inflated, it is balanced. He stops trying to prove himself to everyone. He stops seeking validation in the noise. He starts focusing his energy inward, deepening his sense of commitment, not just to his mission, but to the person who walks beside it with him. You become associated with his sense of movement. His progress becomes tied to your presence, not because you pushed him, but because you believed in him at times when he doubted himself. This is how emotional connection is formed through purpose. When you engage with a man's deeper why, when you ask questions that matter, when you honor not just his results, but his reasons, you create space for him to be more than his performance. You create space for him to belong. And belonging is not created through praise. It is born through alignment. When a man finds someone who doesn't just love the image of him, but respects the invisible work that he does in silence, he begins to bind emotionally. He remembers the way you made him feel capable when he was unsure, the way you saw potential when others only saw pressure. That connection does not fade with time. It grows because it's never about feeding his ego. It was about nurturing the path he walks daily, the mission that gives him meaning, and the dream he may not always know how to express. To stroke his purpose is to speak the language of his soul without ever needing to raise your voice. It is presence over performance, understanding over opinion, and encouragement over evaluation. There is a quiet truth echoes across centuries and cultures. A may be attracted to beauty, drawn to kindness, intrigued by intelligence, but he falls in love, deep, controllable love, with what he cannot fully grasp. Mastery gives a sense of safety, but mystery awakens curiosity. When a woman understands that her depth is more powerful than her display, she no longer tries to win love, she evokes it. Men are conditioned to pursue, to conquer, to chase. It is not because they want to own something, but because pursuit gives them purpose. When something or someone is too easily mastered, it does not satisfy that deeper drive. It may entertain, but it does not transform. The women who leave lasting impressions are not the ones who reveal everything all at once, who explain every emotion, or who bend themselves into something familiar. They are the ones who remain rooted in their truth, yet unfold slowly like a story that can't be skimmed. Mystery is not manipulation. It is not a game or withholding affection or playing with someone's mind. Mystery is the quiet power of knowing that your soul is vast and that no one can reach its end in a single conversation, a single date, or even a single year. When a woman is in touch with the sacred nature of her inner world, her thoughts, her values, her emotions, her intuition, she becomes endlessly fascinating, not because she is trying to be, but because her presence invites discovery. A man falls in love not when he feels he has you, but when he feels that getting to know you is a journey worth taking. When you remain grounded in your values, when you don't rush to prove yourself or explain away your silence, when you let your energy speak more than your words, you create a space of reverence. In that space, the man does not feel entitled to you. He feels honored to earn pieces of you. That shift is where connection deepens and obsession begins. The moment a man senses that he can predict every reaction, every thought, every move, he may feel comfortable, but he no longer feels compelled. But when he senses there are layers he hasn't yet touched, when he sees glimpses of your emotional intelligence, your passions, your fire, your stillness, when he realizes that you are both soft and strong, both calm and wild, he is no longer in control. He is captivated. And men do not fall in love with what they can control. They fall for what makes them lose control, not of themselves, but of their expectations. The mystery lies not in being distant, but in being deeply present without being fully explained. It is the look in your eyes when you're quiet. It is the strength in your boundaries. It is the refusal to be defined by external validation. It is the subtle way you make space for him without giving up your space. In this mystery, a man doesn't feel rejected. He feels invited. Invited to discover, to explore, to earn, not just your love, but your trust. There is a difference between being interesting and being unforgettable. An interesting woman may impress him, but an unforgettable woman shifts something in him. He finds himself thinking about her words at midnight, remembering the way she stood in her truth, recalling the softness in her voice when she shared something rare. She becomes part of his thoughts, not because she tried to force a connection, but because her mystery lingered long after she walked away. And in this mystery, something rare happens. A man stops chasing for conquest and starts chasing for clarity. He wants to know more, not because she is a puzzle, but because she is a poem, one he wants to keep reading, even if he never fully understands it. This is the kind of connection that builds tension, that deepens respect, that creates emotional gravity. He begins to realize that she is not just a woman. She is an experience. She is not just a chapter. She is an entire book that cannot be skimmed or summarized. The art of mystery is not in hiding who you are, but in knowing that not all of you needs to be revealed at once. A man does not fall in love with certainty. He falls in love with a soul that feels familiar and yet still surprises him. He does not bind himself to someone who gives him all the answers, but to the one who makes him ask better questions. The woman who moves with grace, who honors her stillness, who does not chase or explain, but simply allows herself to be. She becomes the storm he walks into willingly, the story he wants to understand, and the mystery he never wants to solve completely. There is a misconception in the world, one that has been passed down through generations and reinforced by silence. It is the belief that a man's strength is defined by how well he hides his emotions, how steady he remains in storms, and how little he shows off what aches inside. From a young age, many boys are taught to suppress, to endure, to avoid vulnerability because it is perceived as weakness. And yet, what most don't see is this, meaning the greatest strength is not in the denial of emotion, but in the courage to feel without falling apart. To truly reach a man's heart, you must become a space where he does not need to perform. You must become a mirror that reflects not just his power, but his pain, without judgment, without correction, without using it against him. A man is not weak when he reveals emotion, he is human. And when a woman learns how to hold that emotion with grace, without trying to control or solve it, she becomes someone he trusts beyond logic. Men often carry burdens in silence. They may laugh while carrying stress, show confidence while drowning in pressure, and appear composed while internally unraveling. It is not because they lack emotion, but because they lack safety, not physical safety, but emotional safety. The fear that if they reveal too much, they will be seen as less of a man, less capable, less attractive. And so they learn to manage pain privately, quietly, sometimes destructively. When a man chooses to open up, even just a little, it is not casual. It is sacred. It is not weakness. It is a form of intimacy. And if a woman responds with criticism, dismissal, or uses his openness against him later, the wound becomes deeper than the emotion he shared. He learns that even love can be dangerous, that even the one who claims to care may not truly understand. But when he is met with presence, when she listens without interruption, when her eyes soften instead of narrowing, when she gives him space to process instead of rushing to fix, he starts to relax into himself. He begins to feel that maybe, for once, he doesn't need to wear armor to be worthy. Maybe in her presence, vulnerability and masculinity can exist side by side. This is not about coddling. This is about witnessing. This is about letting him be whole, not just heroic. Meaning there is power in a woman who can validate without diminishing, who can say, I see how heavy that is, instead of, you should be stronger than this. Who can sit in a storm without making it about her discomfort? Who does not need to control his process, but trusts that by holding space, he will find his way through. This kind of support does not make him weak. It makes him free. Every man has moments where he doubts himself, moments where he questions his worth, his direction, his choices. If in those moments he is met with a partner who belittles or overlooks his emotional reality, a wall begins to rise. But if he is met with quiet understanding, with the kind of presence that doesn't ask him to shrink or explain, something softens in him. And in that softness, love can enter. Validating a man's emotions does not mean treating him like a child. It means respecting his internal world as much as his external actions. It means acknowledging that emotional intelligence is not a feminine trait. It is a human one. And when a woman recognizes that holding space for his feelings is not about making him dependent, but about helping him stay authentic, she becomes a force of restoration in his life. In that space, he does not feel judged. He feels seen. And that feeling for a man who has been conditioned to hide is rare, are enough to make him stay, rare enough to make him open, rare enough to make him love in a way he never has before. Not because he was saved, but because he was safe. because someone understood that strength and softness are not opposites. They are allies, and when a man is allowed to be both without being shamed, he rises, not just in life, but in love. There is something profoundly magnetic about a woman who knows her worth, stands firm in her identity, and walks through life with calm conviction. She does not seek validation, nor does she attempt to control others to feel secure. Her presence speaks before her words do. She doesn't dominate a room through noise, but through presence. And yet, what makes her truly unforgettable is not just her power. It is her ability to make a man feel more powerful in her presence, not less. A man does not fall in love with a woman who competes with him for control. He falls in love with the one who inspires his leadership without challenging his manhood, the one who supports without submission, and who admires without dependence. This woman does not hand him power like a gift. Instead, she reflects it back to him like a mirror. She sees his strength, his vision, his ability to lead, not as threats, but as qualities to honor. And in doing so, she becomes the person he never knew he was searching for. In a world where men are often either idolized or invalidated, finding someone who makes them feel both strong and seen is rare. Most people either boost his ego with flattery or diminish him with constant correction. But the powerful woman knows the balance. She praises with intention and critiques with grace. Her words are rooted not in insecurity or superiority, but in clarity and care. Because she respects herself, she naturally respects him. Because she knows her own strength, she never needs to overpower his. This kind of woman doesn't need to belittle him to lift herself up. She doesn't need to remind him of her value. She lives it. And because of that, when she gives her admiration, it means something. It lands deeper. It penetrates the surface of his ego and touches something in him that many have overlooked, looking, his need to be trusted. Not blindly, not naively, but consciously. When a powerful woman says, "I believe in you," it is not a casual statement. It is a sacred contract, because she does not give her belief to everyone. It is earned. And when it is earned, it becomes a force of fuel in his life. He may have been praised by many. He may have been respected in public. But when this woman sees his quiet effort, his private struggle, and his silent victories, it changes everything. Her validation is not cheap, it is rare. And what is rare becomes precious. He no longer sees her as just a partner. He sees her as a source of strength, clarity, and grounding. Not because she gives him power, but because she reminds him of the power already inside him. A woman's power does not threaten a man when it is rooted in authenticity. It inspires him. It sharpens his focus. It deepens his discipline. It makes him want to rise, not out of fear of losing her, but out of desire to deserve her. Her presence creates standards, not by demanding, but by embodying. And through those standards, she elevates everyone around her, especially the man she chooses. This man begins to realize that he is more intentional when she's near. He speaks with more care. He works with more vision. He treats others with more integrity. Not because she forced it, but because something about her presence reminds him of the man he always wanted to be. She does not need to constantly encourage him, because her very existence is a reminder. Her strength is not loud, it is consistent. And that consistency becomes the calm anchor in his chaotic world. He does not feel smaller in her presence. He feels expanded. He does not feel questioned. He feels trusted. He does not feel tested. He feels challenged in the best way. And in this rare kind of relationship, love is not a transaction of needs. It becomes a mutual awakening. Two individuals standing in their own power, not threatening each other, but honoring, uplifting, and amplifying one another. When she walks in confidence, not to be above him, but to stand with him, something deep unlocks within him. Not a desire to possess her, but a desire to protect what she represents. Not out of obligation, but reverence, because she is not just the woman he loves. She is the reminder of his highest self,